What's keeping you up at night? I'm Alanna McGinn, host of the Bedtime Edit podcast. And today we are talking about a topic that I've wanted to cover for a while now. And that is on the ability to let it go. And what does that affect? Obviously, it affects our sleep and increases our stress. I talk to a lot of women. I talk to a lot of my clients. And one of the main reasons why they can't fall asleep at night or fall back to sleep at night is those ruminating thoughts. And those ruminating thoughts stem from the inability to let go of a person, of an event, of a situation. She is the author of 2 self-published books, Inspiration in Action, A Woman's Guide to Happiness and Unconform, Harnessing the Radical Power of Courage. Hello, Kathie. Thanks so much for coming on the Bedtime Edit.
It's my pleasure to be here with you, my lovely.
All right. So before we get into how we met, because we're going to talk about that for sure, tell us a little bit about yourself and what does it mean to be a happiness expert?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. How do you become a happiness expert? Because, it sounds like something you'd like to try. But what I like to tell people, it's not misleading, but I am an expert in my own happiness. And I like to teach other women, especially women midlife and beyond, how they can become an expert in their happiness too. So I teach what I call sustainable happiness. And that includes the full spectrum of emotion. It's not about unicorns and rainbows. It is really about feeling all the feels, taking a look at all the ways that we are so complex as women, especially as women, and recognizing that there's so many messages we have that are just inaccurate today. Things we learned when we were children that we still believe as we're going on, like subconsciously, we believe so many things that are just wrong. So I like to help people unlearn what they think they know to be true, to create space to learn things that are actually going to bring them to this place of what I call sustainable happiness. And that includes having gratitude for what you already have. Instead of happiness being conditional upon you having lost 10 pounds, gained 10 pounds, have a partner, a house, whatever, new job, whatever it is, that's the thread that runs in our thinking mind. But when you're grateful for what you have, it calms your energy down. You have space to receive more of what it is you appreciate in your life. And then we have to be courageous in our lives too. We have to try things. We can't always have the answer to everything. And this speaks to your idea of control, which I know we'll discuss. The idea of surrender is part of sustainable happiness, as opposed to trying to control everything, surrendering to the power greater than us, let's say, so that we create space to receive what it is we say we want once we know what we want. Because part of control comes from not being clear about what we want. We want to be forgiving, and we do forgiveness for ourselves, not for anybody else. We want to be kind and compassionate instead of judgmental. And above all, we want to have boundaries in our lives, because once we know what we want and who we are, we need to protect the gold we've mined for. And we do that by having boundaries, because often as we're growing up, we learn, often as women, how to be pleasers because we want to figure out how we can navigate through life. And pleasing means that people can trounce all over your stuff and your energy. And so you need a boundary to protect yourself from other people invading your space, so to speak, so that you stay in your lane, you take your power back from all other sources, and you live a life that is what I call sustainably happy. So that's me.
I love it. I mean, we already feel better just with you saying that. So, which brings me to how we met. We met in the green room at CityLine. Both of us were CityLine experts. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what my topic was that day, and I don't remember what your topic was that day. It was obviously something to do with happiness and something to do with sleep, right?
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in the back room of CityLine, and I was in the midst of my divorce. We had never met before.
Right.
And like many times when you're sitting in the green room, you're meeting all these amazing people, experts and crew and all of that. And you and I remember just connected. We were sitting together on the couch and we just started talking. And literally within 10 minutes of our conversation, I was in tears, sharing to you my life woes. And it's so funny because you are a happiness expert, but every time we do talk, I cry, and not in a bad way, but you just have this way of getting everything out of me in the best way possible, in the most loving and caring way possible. And I immediately felt that connection to you. Magic happened in that green room.
Yeah.
I mean,
same.
so many times, right? But friendships that came away from that show, I always have you in mind for that, for sure. And that's how we met.
Yeah. But I just want to say something about sustainable happiness. It includes all of the emotions. It's not just about unicorns and rainbows. We need to feel the feels of what we're going through, where we're hurting, what's going on, because when we're denying, we're not accepting what's going on. That's a big part of what I teach women, is to accept whatever the hell's going on. And tears, by the way, are information. That's all. They're just information. And we have to clean those tear ducts out. So I'm happy for you that you were comfortable, and I'm thrilled and honored that you were comfortable enough to be vulnerable with me. And you said woes. You shared your woes. It wasn't a woe. It was a challenge you were experiencing. And I like to say to women that we are all always being pushed through some kind of keyhole. That's what it feels like. You're being pushed through some kind of keyhole to get to the other side. That's what personal growth is all about. We have to go through those experiences in order to gain on the other side of it.
So when you say women are pushed through the keyhole, is this why, in your opinion, do we love the control? Because that was my question. Why do women love control so much? But is it that we love the control? Do we feel a need for the control? And, specifically in that midlife stage, is it society's expectations that make us want to have that control? So yeah, I guess my question is, do we love the control, or do we feel the need for control, or is it a mix of the both?
Yes, 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 and yes to all the things you brought up. It's all a yes. But here's the bottom line of control. It's fear.
Yes.
That's it. That's all it is. It's fear in disguise. Fear is disguised in so many ways in our lives as women. Look, here's the truth of it all. Women are the true leaders in our society. We don't get the credit for it, but we are the true leaders in our society. And we can all, with a little bit of training, become air traffic controllers if we so choose, because we know how to do so many things.
I don't want to be that right now.
No, of course not. Of course not. Because you've figured it out. You've figured it out. And that's the whole thing about this personal growth. And you mentioned, midlife. This is when a lot of things come up for review. And Dr. Christian Northrup, who is an American physician, MD, but super wise, very insightful about our emotional lives and so on. She's got a lot to say. She says menopause is when women give birth to themselves. Let that sink in for just a sec if you're a woman, because we are brought up to take care of everybody else. It's in many of us are I'm maternal. I don't have children, but I'm very maternal, and I love to care for people. We are taught that this is good. This is always good to care for others, but you come last, right? You're at the back. You want to make sure your children have shoes. They're taken care of, but you'll go barefoot for a while. You're good. Until you get to midlife. All the things you've denied about yourself, all the things you put on the back burner about yourself come up for review. And when women have such a hard time in menopause, I feel it's because they haven't addressed these things as they've gone along. They're not used to putting themselves first. And I'm not saying this to deliver bad news. This is actually fantastic, because once you figure out your midlife and beyond is all about you, and I mean that in the most self-loving way, not in a selfish, self-absorbed way. I'd say selfish, but not self-absorbed way. Then you can start to unlearn all the things you knew in the past, because that program is no longer relevant, which is why it speaks to this idea of, empty nest syndrome, why women feel so lost when their children are gone, because that gave them purpose. So much of what we're going to talk about today with respect to control comes back to fear. I don't know who I am without this purpose. I don't know who I am without this person doing what I want them to do. I need people. I need life to have some kind of, my strategy needs to be in operation. I get it. I understand it. I was this way until I figured out it doesn't actually work. Look, the only thing, Alanna, we have control over, and you know this too, the only thing we have control over in life are the thoughts we choose to think. Period. That's it. We can't control other people. We cannot control life's events. We can control our response to everything. But we're so conditioned, I say conned, into thinking that if we manipulate people and tell them loudly what they should do, that we'll feel better because they'll do what we want, blah. We got to let people live their lives. You got to let people do their thing. And that requires surrendering that idea of control. Are you with me so far?
I mean, yes. I don't even want to ask you questions. I just want to let you talk because you are hitting on so many points in terms of control is based on fear. It's based on that attachment to that outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want this conversation to be about my divorce, but of course, that's the topic for me that I pull from, where I had to learn to release control, and that was hard for me. For those that know me, I do like control. I am a type A person. I have been deemed, especially during the divorce, a control freak. I think a part of that was that in my marriage, as a mom, as a partner, I was given that control. And did I like being in control? Of course. I'm not going to deny that for sure. But it wasn't like I had a fight to stay in the driver's seat in terms of decisions for the kids and parenting and all of that stuff and running the house. And then obviously going through the process, I'll be honest, it wasn't until I was in therapy, and I remember my two instances actually happened. One was my therapist. The biggest takeaway that I have from those therapy sessions while I took them while I was going through the divorce was that you can only control just what you said, your own behavior. You cannot control someone else's behavior. And I wish I had learned that in the beginning, because there was a lot of events and situations that I'm not proud of, how I handled myself because of that fear, because of that need to control the conversation, control the outcome, control what others thought of me. I struggle with that big time, right? And I think that that's another aspect of we need that control, is not, wanting everyone to see us how we want to be seen, not how they potentially see us. And it wasn't until like midway and, throughout the separation, we lived together for that year and a half, where I learned to let go of his behavior towards me. And it changed how I responded to certain events and certain situations. And I was proud of myself for that. I wasn't always perfect on it, I'll be honest. But I've carried that with me throughout, since that. I can only control how I respond, how I set up boundaries. So again, my example is my divorce, dealing with my ex, dealing with those situations. But for many women, it could be dealing with your partner, dealing with certain events at work, dealing with all of those things. It is based on fear. It is. And I also think it's based on, what we've been given. Yes, women are natural born leaders. So we're kind of given that control right from the start. And then bashed when, deem that control freak when we take that control and run with it, right?
Yeah, there are a couple of things in there that I'd like to just sort of pop some ideas in. I don't have all the answers, to be frank, and I'm not a therapist, remember that.
I do. Yeah,
but
I know.
But I think it's really key to understand that women who feel safe in relationships don't feel the need to control. That's at work, that's in a friendship, that's at home, that's within ourselves. When we don't feel safe, we feel the need to be in control. So your ex is an ex for a reason. I don't know him. I'm not bashing him. Your ex is an ex for a reason. Everybody shows up in our lives to teach us something.
I believe that.
That's it.
I'm a firm believer of that as well.
But we need to take the lesson from it instead of just turning on them. And what I used to do when I was younger, very young, I blame my parents for everything. All the challenges I had in my life was their fault because they blah, 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 blah. So therapy taught me my parents did the best job they could. Period. End of the story. You better figure that one out. And then as we have relationships in our friendships and we have relationships, intimate relationships, everybody shows up to teach us something so that we can grow. Because I'm sure you don't have the same dynamic in your current relationship as you had in your previous relationship. And if you did, it would be because you haven't learned the lesson. That's why we repeat the same situation. Mm-hmm.
I don't. But also what's great is I also don't have the same relationship with my ex. I mean, obviously I don't have the same relationship with my ex now. He's my ex. But in terms of feeling a need for that control in the co-parenting dynamic, that's gone because I've learned to let that go. I've learned those boundaries. Yeah. I think there was an expectation that I would try to control that scenario. And I'm very proud of myself for that. I haven't, and I don't, it's not even that it's hard for me to not, I really, truly don't feel a need to, because I have set up those boundaries for me. Do I cross those boundaries sometimes? Yes, of course. But, well, I'm not perfect, but, it was a huge growing lesson for me in that term of letting go, setting those boundaries. And I don't need to, the kids will be okay if I don't control 50% of their time and lives. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's freeing. It really is.
And also, it's worth celebrating, Alanna. I think, women we are the toughest taskmasters. We do a lot. We are the real leaders in the world. And so we have a lot of pressure on ourselves to be top mom, top this, top everything. And really, we need to lighten up a little. I think we need to lighten up a little bit on ourselves, show ourselves a little bit more loving. And, all of this sounds counterintuitive to how we've been conditioned to be out there doing and accomplishing and taking care of everybody and, being a superwoman. And, it's a lot of BS. Yes, we can do everything. Yes, but do we have to do it all at once? Do we have to? And can we not make a mistake once in a while? You said it. Am I perfect? No. Well, no, you weren't made to be perfect. And I think that's also worth celebrating. And I think that's an important point to make, is that we are all gloriously flawed as human beings. That's on purpose, because our job in life, this is it, learn and grow. That's it. That's our true job. So when we stop criticizing ourselves for not being perfect and start celebrating our personal growth, that's a very different vibe. You're kind of slapping yourself on the shoulder because you don't need to do that thing anymore that you did in the past. I have the same thing with my own trajectory in life too, where I look back and I think, wow, I exhausted myself trying to take care of or control or, make sure everybody did what I thought they should do. And now when people are barking at me what they think I should do, I'm very kind about it, because I realize it's their fear. It's got nothing to do with me. And some of it's great advice, but I just take it whatever I need. I like to say I take the best and leave the rest. And that's how I operate now. It's very much, I'm kinder toward myself. I don't live in shame like I did when I was younger. I live in joy, and I live in peace, because that's what I cultivate with what we're talking about today, is this growth in all of these areas around surrendering the need to have the outcome suit you, and surrendering, you mentioned earlier, surrendering control and sort of dependence on an outcome, a certain outcome. But let things breathe. Let people do what they have to do. Let them fall down. And you be there as a friend or as a mother to catch them. Let them make their own mistakes. Let them struggle. Let them suffer a bit. That's part of what it is to be a human being.
Yeah. What are some signs? Is there a difference between healthy control and then control that's limiting our happiness? Like, what are some signs? I can talk obviously about ruminating thoughts and sleep, but what are some signs that women can look for when it's like they've passed that point of healthy control, if that is even a thing?
I think the word overwhelm comes to mind. Some people call it burnout, overwhelm. I think there's healthy control. I was a producer for many years, as well as a host on television. And I had to organize many details, and I still do in my life. I'm really good at it. It's something people used to call me like the cat herder, because I could pull things together. So I think, it's a skill, and there's nothing wrong with being an organized person and wanting to have things organized. But it's when it gets out of control, when it's running you, that you want to address it. And also, how do you feel about you? That's my main thing. How do you feel about yourself? Are you feeling like, I'm so frustrated with everybody. I'm so mad at my kids because they don't. I'm so pissed at my partner because they don't. My work person. If the list is long of people who are disappointing you on the regular, you got to look inside.
When it gets to the point where now it's starting to affect relationships, whether it be coworkers, partners,
everything,
children. Yeah.
And if you're constantly complaining about something outside yourself, look inside. Why are you feeling this way about other people? People are just doing them. Not all people are your people. Sometimes you have to be a diplomat, just be kind and respectful. They're not your people. Doesn't mean they're not worthy of being here. They're just not your people. So sometimes people, come up against somebody who doesn't agree with them and they want to go at it. Like they want to, what for what? Like if I have a certain mindset about, that's my mindset. I'm going to grow when I choose to grow. I'm not going to change because you're yelling at me. I'm not going to change because you're arguing with me. I'm not going to change because you're nagging me, especially. These are all just symptoms of we're overwhelmed. And so many women are overwhelmed. But it's look inside is always the solution. And ask yourself, why do I feel so irritated by Alanna? Why is she bothering me? It's something in me. Alanna's not doing anything. Alanna's just being Alanna. So lighten up on you and take a look at where you can find some personal growth to make your life easier, and let Alanna be Alanna. Not personal to you, Alanna, but let people be who they are. Find your lane. The thing about, I feel, women in midlife is we get lost. Sometimes we get lost and we don't know who we are, but that's on purpose again. When I come back to that idea of birthing ourselves, this is a new purpose in life, perhaps, for some. My broadcasting career shifted and changed over the years and moved into this new form. I had to go through a keyhole to figure it out. I had to use courage to develop confidence. This is what it's all about. Stop being so afraid of not having all the answers. Stop being afraid of not looking good to other people. Because here's another truth bomb. What other people think of you is none of your business. You got to do you. What are we waiting for? Are we waiting for the right something? It's never going to be the right anything. You got to start somewhere. And when it comes to not care, it's easy to say, don't worry about what people think of you. We all have this thing about it, especially in North America. The fact of the matter is, when you know more about who you are and what you want out of life, you're less concerned about what other people think of you. And over time, you'll practice and practice to the point where it doesn't matter what they think of you, because what you're doing is so important, you have to focus on that.
This could be men or women, but I know for many women is that thought of trying to control what others think of you. And that was a big thing that I had to work on, was letting go of that. Also letting go, and this is, I know for many women, when it comes to sleep, you're going to bed, you're so easily distracted throughout the day, then you're going to bed, all those distractions are gone, and that's when every person, event, situation, whether it be that day, whether it be 5 years ago, whether it be yesterday, pops into your head. And it's, if we don't control a situation or a person or an outcome, if we do let it go, we're saying that we're wrong. We're saying that we've lost that fight, right? Mm-hmm. And I know for me, that was a big deal.
Right.
I had to be right. He had to see my point. And I don't say he. Again, I don't want to just put this on my ex. Just in life in general, they have to see my point. They have to understand my reasoning. And that is why I will keep nailing this on the head, while I will keep arguing this point.
Yeah. And
it took me a long time. And again, not perfect at it, but it is something that I'm working on, is letting go of, it's okay if they don't see my point.
Yeah.
It's okay if they think I'm a horrible person. I can still live a happy life with this going on, you know?
I do know. And let me just bring in a little bit of the kooky science I love so much. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor is a neuroscientist, an American neuroscientist. You may have heard of her book, My Stroke of Insight. She wrote a book about the stroke that she had, where her left brain function shut down. And she was left, as she says, in her right mind. And the right brain is really this in the momentness, this pure perfection, just quiet. It's where artists and writers and creatives go when they're in their flow. There's nothing happening but that. The left brain is where all the functioning of our daily lives lives. The files we have, like what day our birthday is, what side of the road we should drive on, who our kids are, where we live, et cetera, et cetera. All the important details of life. But it's also where our ego lives. And Dr. Taylor explains in her book, which is easy to read and an excellent way to understand the human mind a little better. She says the ego wants one of three things, and maybe all three. It wants to be right. It wants to feel special. Or it wants to be miserable. So when we're operating from any of those things, when we need to be right about everything, when we need to have them see our point, when we need to argue to the death, that's the ego. When we want to feel special because we need outside validation for who we are, that's the ego. And when we want to be miserable, we want to be a victim. We don't mind that because people give us fuel and that makes us feel a little bit better temporarily. But the problem with the ego is that it's constantly hungry. So you can feed it a compliment, but it wants another one right away. So there's no satiating that part of ourselves. And that drive for us to control kind of comes from that same place because we're afraid. We're afraid of not getting it right. We're afraid of being rejected. We're afraid of not being enough. We're afraid of being too much. We're afraid of being seen. We're afraid of being not seen. There's so much to this complex thing of being a human being, and it speaks to both men and women, but women have it a lot worse because there's so much pressure on us to be performative, to be out there and we got it all going on, and if I'm not the perfect everything, which is total BS. And I'll tell you, social media has done us no favors.
I was just going to say that social media does not help with that.
No, because we need to pull it back, like zoom out a little bit and see how important you are in the big picture. Not very important. We're just cogs. We're just little people doing our thing. So why not take all your power, invest it all in you and your loved ones, and just do the very best you can and be kind to yourself as you're doing it. That sounds simple. The rest of it is so difficult. So it's like pushing rocks uphill constantly. When we want other people to come over to our side, when we want them to see our viewpoint, when we want to be right, like I just have no attachment to that anymore. I don't care. If you agree with me, get it, don't get it. I'm into all this kooky stuff because everything is energy. It's physics.
I'm into the kooky too.
Yeah.
I love that. And send me the link to that book that you mentioned.
Yeah, sure.
And I will put that in the show notes for anyone who is who's wanting to read it.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I'm into all the kooky stuff too.
All matter is energy. So energy should be moving. You're talking about ruminating thoughts, that's stuck energy. You're keeping it stuck by chewing on it. The ego likes that. It likes that misery of, oh, Joey didn't say hi to me in the hall at school. So what does that mean about me? Joey did. Well, Joey might have been distracted by a green thing down in the corner and not even noticed you there. So we have to take our power back and recognize that emotion is meant to be in motion. It's energy in motion. So 90 seconds, let it go. And if it keeps coming back, then you got to share it with somebody, find a way to talk about it with somebody you trust to make yourself feel a little bit better about it. The day we met in the green room and you had a cry, I'm sure you felt even just a snick better after sharing it with somebody who didn't say, well, that's terrible. Look at you failing in life. You're not failing in life. None of us is failing in life as long as we're learning and growing. None of us is failing. In fact, I don't believe in failure. I think there's only opportunity to learn.
Absolutely. Okay, so you've already given so many amazing tips and suggestions, but what are your top 3 suggestions on if you're a woman and you're listening to this and you're like, I need to let go of something? Again, it could be a person, a situation, an outcome, an event, anything in your life. What are your top 3 suggestions on how to do that?
Number 1 is check your thoughts. Check your thoughts. The only thing you're in control of in your life are the thoughts you choose to think. So you're actually choosing, even though it doesn't sound like it, even though it feels so natural for you to try to control outcomes all the time, because it's a habit you learn starting young. And when we get to midlife, that's when it all catches up with us. And we've got decades upon decades of these, I'll call them poor habits. So check your thoughts, because what I want for people is to develop new, more productive habits. So asking yourself the question when you catch yourself trying to control something that is not controllable, what is it in me that's scared? What am I afraid of here?
Your thoughts control your emotions then control your behavior.
Yeah.
So just by starting and changing your thoughts, it will change your
emotions.
Even
starting
and
to
therefore
just,
how you...
Yeah, but just reflecting on your thoughts, not even change. Like I don't use the word change in my work. I use the word shift because my brain won't stand it. My brain doesn't want to change anything. My brain is like, no, I'm good the way I am. But if I say shift, I'm going to shift my perspective on this situation slightly. It's a little easier to manage. We can say it's hard. It's hard if you say it's hard. But if we lighten up a little wee bit and just allow ourselves, just look at the thought first of all, because everything in personal development in my world is done in tiny increments. So we want to do that habit stacking, just small, new habits stacked upon one another, develop a shift in your mindset. And that personal growth comes in. You said, I'm better at it. It's hard. I'm working on it. I could say the same thing. I've been working on it for decades. It's still challenging. I don't use the word hard because it's hard if I say it is. It's challenging for a reason, because I have to have courage to step into what it is I really want. And if that's more peace, then I have to bring more peace into my life. It's not going to come to me at the corner store or when I'm outside. However, I will say being outside in nature is a very important thing for us women because it is helpful to move energy. And the trees and the plants all give off these chemicals called phytoncides that help us with our immune system. They help to move energy. They help with our emotional life and our immunity as well. So that's super important. And then I'm going to say it, like it or not, meditation. Like it or not, meditation is an opportunity to start a bank account of resilience. Every time I meditate, I deposit in my bank account of resilience. And that gives me more of that peace and calm, that more grounded approach to situations. When we're ungrounded, we're flighty. That's why we feel the need to, I got to control this. I got to take that. It's that adrenaline driven thing as opposed to being grounded and thinking before we speak and not needing to be right. It calms everything down. And over time, it just shifts how you are as a person. So there are a million ways to meditate. It can be walking in nature. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I always, whenever the word meditation comes up, because it's obviously something that I teach as well to my clients, I think it's so important that people understand meditation doesn't necessarily have to be the actual act of meditating, right? What we think of the person sitting down in a meditative state, it doesn't have to be that. And I love that you brought up nature. I know that both you and I are huge supporters of that and practice that in our own lives, practice that with our clients, getting out in nature. So meditation could just simply be a walk in nature.
Yeah,
I think be baking, cooking, like it doesn't actually have to be the act of meditation.
Well, I think everything is an act of meditation, though, to sort of challenge you on that, because I think we've misunderstood the idea of it.
Yes.
It's whatever it means to you, as long as when you're doing whatever you're doing, you're present. That's why you see the guru cross-legged, present. They're present in that moment so that they're available for the energy to come in and sort of soothe them. It isn't meant to stop our thoughts. That's another misunderstanding about meditation. Just let the thoughts come and go. Be present to what's going on. Listen to your breath. Listen to ocean sounds. Put on ocean sounds and do some baking. Do something like that that just brings you into the present moment. Less distraction, more focus on yourself. This is another reason why women like control. Then it's not about me. I'm the hero because I'm taking care of everybody else. But really, who's taking care of you? Who's taking care of you? Only you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think acceptance is a big thing too. Accept that you might not get the outcome that you want. Accept that you might not get that apology that you want. You might not get your point of view understood. That's a big one that I work on.
I love that.
Acceptance is huge.
Yeah, and that is a big piece of sustainable happiness. And I'm introducing a new retreat at the end of May in Ottawa called the Self-Love Retreat, because I think acceptance of what is one of the keys to furthering this journey of self-love that I think all women need to have more of going on. So, but acceptance of yourself as you are and loving yourself as you are is really important and totally counterintuitive to what we've been taught, right? So it's a big subject. I mean, we could probably do a whole podcast just on acceptance for sure.
Good idea for a future topic. I like that. Okay. So for the women who feel like they have to do it all, we're going to end this podcast with a little bit of a breathing exercise that I'm going to explain in a second, but let's leave with the last question. For the women who feel like they have to do it all, whether it be at home, whether it be at work, just in their life in general. Again, if we're talking about midlife women, you have to think there is women who are in, whether it's a new relationship, they're still in the same relationship. This is a long-term relationship now. Kids are leaving the house. They could be caregivers. Like there's a lot of aspects of their life where they feel they need to control, right? Mm-hmm. So for those women that feel like they need to do it all, what is your advice to them? What is that very first step that they can take? Just the first step.
Ask for help. This is something that women are not accustomed to doing because we think we can do it all. We've been taught to, and we're celebrated for doing it all. We're celebrated for all the productivity that we put out into the world. Isn't that true? But who is there for you? And when we ask for help, whether it's from our partner, from our children, from our family members, we're actually including them in creating something beautiful in our lives. So I say change the channel on having to do it all and invite other people to help you make your life and those around you even better.
Yes. And toss the guilt away. And I'm going to use like the smallest example of what I mean by that, because I know that this doesn't affect men in this. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not a man, but it could be the littlest thing. Like if the kitchen needs to be clean, the dishwasher needs to be emptied and filled, anything like that. I know that if I do this, my kids don't feel guilt, like, oh, we should be doing that. Or, you know, my partner doesn't feel guilt, oh, we should be doing that. But the second that somebody else does it, my son the other night said, oh, it's okay, Mom, I'll fill and load the dishwasher. He's never offered that before. And I thought, okay, like I'm going to take you up on that for sure. But as I'm walking away, there's that guilt in the back of my mind. I should be doing it. Like we need to get over that as women. You know, if I see my partner cleaning up the kitchen after I've cooked the meal, so it makes sense that he's now tidying up, there's that guilt of I should be cleaning the kitchen. Like, why do we do that to ourselves? We need to get over that. We need to let that go.
Let me just explain what guilt is. This is what guilt is. Guilt is like chewing gum to solve a chemistry problem. It's completely useless. It's completely useless. So here's my suggestion. You've made dinner. You're walking out of the kitchen. Your partner is going to clean up. Thank you so much for cleaning up. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go and have a seat in my chair and relax. How about that? How about we acknowledge that we've made a contribution and we're good now? Instead, the guilt is like, it's another thing that women are, it's like, we're perfectly fine to feel guilty, but then we're still in the shit. We're still thinking about the things we haven't done that were not enough. No. Thank everybody for their contribution. Now, there's a reason your son offered to empty the dishwasher, and I love it. I don't know what the reason is, but there's a reason he did it. And if it was me, I would go back to him randomly, not at any particular time, and probably not in the kitchen, and say, you know what, bud? I really appreciated you offering to empty the dishwasher.
Oh, I did.
It really means the world to me. And when we give people this type of feedback and this type of energy, instead of, you need to empty the dishwasher, because you're exhausted from doing everything for everyone. Receive the help. This is the part of surrender that's so important. Receive, open to receiving. That's another thing about control that gets women in a jam. We're not open to receiving. We don't know how to be open to receiving. Even compliments. A lot of women don't know how to take a friggin' compliment. I love your hair. Oh, I love your jacket. Oh, this thing, I got it on sale. You know, we got to have a story. How about just saying thank you because people are giving you a gift? Just say thank you. I appreciate that. This is a different way to look at life. I appreciate there's a lot I've shared with you today that might be a little bit like, whoa, that's too much information. But if you start with one or two small things, see how it goes, you'll want to build on because you'll feel better and you'll have less guilt and you'll feel the need to control less.
I love that. I adore you.
I love you.
I adore you. You're going to be coming on because we have so much more things to talk about. I will have you on again. But I want to leave us with a breathing exercise that really helped me when I'm really struggling with kind of letting go of that control, whether it's to do with a person or an outcome. So I want everyone who's listening to try it as well. It's a 3-breath activity, super easy to do. I want us to take one big breath in. And I want you to think to yourself that this person, this event, this outcome no longer has control over me. I want you to breathe in again, nice big breath. Think to yourself, just because someone says something about me does not make it true. And breathe that out. That is a big one. That was a big one for me. One last breath, breathe in. Think to yourself, just because someone threatens me doesn't mean, or a situation threatens you, doesn't mean that it is going to happen. Shifting that mindset and breathing it out. And this can be practiced throughout the day. It can be practiced at bedtime when you're trying to get to sleep at night, or at 3 a.m. when you're waking up and those ruminating thoughts start. Breathing in, this person doesn't control me. What they say doesn't make it true. It doesn't mean that this outcome is going to happen. So like you said, not changing, but shifting our mindset, which leads to future growth.
Love it.
So Kathie, thank you so much for coming on. Where can everyone reach you?
Best place really is my website. It's kind of my home base, kathiedonovan.com. You can follow me on Instagram. We have lots of fun there. I'm also on Facebook and I'm on TikTok. So come and see wherever you want to find me. I'll be there.
Find new episodes of the Bedtime Edit every other Monday. Follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts.